How do you start to map that research article into a press release? Because it's not a straightforward process always. I like to start by, I'll go through, I'll read the manuscript, and I'll take my highlighter or have a piece of paper next to me, and I'll go through and I'll highlight the statements that I think are sort of all of the important statements and messages in the manuscript. To kind of show my cards a little bit, like there's significant parts of the manuscript that I tend to skip over. I don't read all of the materials and methods. I usually do a very quick skim of the full results section, usually looking for if there's things called out in the conclusions or discussion section. I'll go back and look, do I need to be able to define how this result was achieved or a particular test that was used, or the results is often where limitations are noted as well for the study or what was looked at. But in the process of writing those manuscripts, and all of you have done this, I'm sure, if you've been the one writing it as the primary author, the abstract, you already have to do a lot of work to provide your work in a broader context of why the result that you achieved matters and is worthy of publication in the first place. You probably also had to write some kind of pitch or message to the editors when you were submitting the article. And I love it when I'm working with a researcher and they send me that pitch because that, to me, in their own words, not in the context of what was actually written in the manuscript, tells me why this was important to them. So after one person did that, I just started thinking to ask for that because I just found it so valuable for, if I'm going to write a quote in that researcher's words or things like that to draw on that language. And then the discussion section, really helps to bring it all together. It talks about the results. It talks about why it's important, and oftentimes, talks about, what's next. We achieved this. What do we need to do now to advance this further down the line? So going through, just looking at those key places and writing down all of your messages. The next step in formulating a press release, which really has to take what follows the format of a manuscript and trying to put it into a different kind of narrative, it helps to group like with like. So taking a look at all of the messages that might be in different parts of your manuscript in different places, trying to group them together into logical categories is going to be a really good place to start. And here is kind of where you start that whittling process where you can't communicate everything. Again, you're trying to go from something that is really long and complex and getting to that essence of what is most important for me to communicate to a broad audience so that they can accurately understand what I did and hopefully understand why it's important. So here you need to think about audience. And that audience, the primary audience that you're trying to reach, is going to help you to prioritize the messages that rise to the top. And I suggest kind of limiting yourself to 4 or 5 main points that you want to emphasize in the press release, and then to build the announcement around that. So again, you'll be thinking about, as you start to prioritize, what is it that you need to communicate so that somebody can accurately understand you? What is the audience that you're trying to reach? Is there something that you want that audience to do with this information? Is there some kind of action? Are there sort of sub-messages that you need to address? Are there sort of questions or concerns that a person who reads, your headline might raise, and make sure that those concerns are addressed? So that kind of gives you a place to start with information. And I do feel strongly that even if you're writing for a fairly sophisticated audience, that you should start very broad. Write your headline and at least the first paragraph so that almost anybody could understand it. And this is like one of my favorite quotes. I think it's really overused in the PR industry, but that's okay because I like Albert Einstein. You really don't understand something unless you can explain it to your grandmother. And so often I use that check and realize I just don't understand what this is. I have to go back and ask more questions. So, getting to that and, simplifying it, and this is going to be a process of iteration. You're probably going to try it once or twice, and it's still not going to be there. It's probably still going to be technical. So I recommend doing this with somebody that maybe is not familiar with what you are doing at all and trying to explain your research. And this messaging process is going to take you really far. It's not just going to be for your press release, but it's going to get at, again, that elevator pitch or positioning that you're doing to write about your lab for the website or your personal description in your social media profile, or kind of any of those places, thinking about how to really simplify that message so that anybody will get what you're doing and why it's important in as few words as possible. You'll end up using that again and again and again, so it's worth taking the time.